Welcome to the Phoenix Effect podcast with Elle, Kristen, and Dennis. We are three narrative-trained therapists, and we will be interviewing storytellers from all walks of life. We will explore what people do to find belonging, purpose, and success. Listen in as we delve into the depths of the human experience. If you have a story you would like to tell, stay tuned to find out how to become a part of the show. Are you ready for a good story? Here we go. Welcome, Ryan.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to your awesome podcast.
I'm really thrilled to have you. You are such a joy to talk to on your podcast. Can you tell our listeners where you are in the world and what you like to do while you're there?
I'm originally from Los Angeles. Right now, I'm currently residing in San Antonio, Texas. Something that I like to do, what I love to do is actually podcast. So I do a podcast and I also do some stuff on YouTube. The name of my podcast is The Truth That Heals, and I find it healing to be able to express myself.
Yeah, I love that. The Truth That Heals. It's such an interesting title. It sounds like there's something about truth that's really important to you.
It's very important because for so long, truth was something that I would repress because of shame or the feeling of guilt. It was actually scary at first to confront it, but I found it to be very liberating.
Yeah, I have so many questions. How was it for you to write the story?
The story has always been hard, but over time, it gets easier. And my story is that growing up in LA, I ended up joining a religious community, Catholic, Christian. And the idea was for me to do something good in this world, do something righteous in God's eyes, or however you want to put it. But as I joined this community, it was going against a lot of the Catholic upbringing that I have. But over time, I would be silenced, I would be punished, I would be put in solitary confinement. In the beginning, I was only 17. And of course, I reacted because some of the things weren't really what my parents or what the nuns taught me back in school. It was totally going against, but it was done in there was, the manipulation behind it was very strategic. So it's not like I could just wake up and go against it entirely, because when I would start to articulate my frustrations, then there would be punishments. For example, no food, less sleep. So the sleep would be like 3 hours. If you're falling asleep, there'd be people poking you, keeping you awake, because then the idea is if you're sleeping during prayer, and prayer in a cult is all day. So if you're falling asleep, then it's like the demons are winning over you. So putting that to one side, I'm trying to also share my story that maybe the word isn't always brainwashing. People like to use the word brainwashing, but I like to express it as my brain was being rewired into this feeling of, oh, I have to do this because if I don't do it, I'm going to be punished. And if not, also the idea was like, if you don't pray all day or if you don't obey what the leaders tell you, your family is going to suffer. So it's like my family was held hostage by the devil, supposedly. So the only way to liberate them was by me suffering, because the idea was suffering. This is where they twist the theology. The way they would see it is the more you suffer, the more like points or the bigger your bank account is, spiritual bank account. So after 11 years in this environment of beatings, of extreme fasting, sleep deprivation, solitary confinement, I left that place confused. I left that place lost. And many of us, when I say us, members who were in and members who have left, we still had a lot of respect for them. We had a lot of respect for the leaders. But I think my initial upbringing from my parents and from where I grew up with in Los Angeles, I think it gave me a foundation where I knew that a lot of this was not right. But as I left and I would share with other ex-members, hey, these things that happened to us wasn't right. These twists and turns in theology regarding suffering, or how they would take one small doctrine and make it so extreme, it's not really Christian. It's not right. But the effect of that was I would be silenced. Ryan, you need to shut up. Or, hey, you need, what was the word they would tell me? You need to stop complaining and just offer this up as a suffering to God, because the theology was the more you suffer, the bigger your reward is. And I didn't accept that. So I had to first write a blog because I was too afraid to get on a microphone. I was too ashamed to get in front of a camera and to share my story. So I first wrote blogs, and then it evolved into me having the courage to get on a podcast and to share my story. Other people were able to connect, and it has started the discussion that religious abuse, religious trauma, spiritual abuse, it does exist. And because of that, I have found healing, and I am no longer having to be a slave to that old narrative. Now I can make my own narrative, and that's been the healing part of it.
Thank you for sharing all that. How did you come to be in the cult in the first place?
So in Catholicism, you have a lot of religious communities. You have a lot of religious groups, but religious communities doesn't mean it's a new church. With Catholicism, you have a lot of religious communities like the Jesuits, Franciscans, but each community has to go through proper channels to be recognized by the church. To start, what happened was this group came to Los Angeles, like a missionary group, originally from the Philippines. But the way the founder, because every cult has like a founder, the way the founder portrayed it to all of us, to all the families, was that he was a legit Catholic leader. He is a priest. In my opinion, he shouldn't be anymore. But anyways, each community has the responsibility to open its doors to get scrutinized by the Vatican. In the beginning, there's a little bit of leeway so it can construct itself. My family and I saw this community as the other religious communities that I've mentioned, like Franciscans, Jesuits, Salesians. And my parents didn't want me to go, but my parents didn't know that behind closed doors, because they had this priest, not the founder, but another priest who came out like a mystic, like he can read your soul. And he would give this, I can see what God wants for you to do. Like I have this mystic power. And it was, the way it was framed was, look, God is calling you now. If you don't answer God's call, you're saying no to God. Can you really live saying no to God? God wants you now. So that was our conversation. The conversation with my parents was, look, we know your son is still in high school, but we're going to help him get an education. That was calming to my parents because they didn't want me to go. But to answer your question, no, my parents weren't in this cult. We just saw this community as a legit religious community. But over time, I started aging, maturing. I started seeing that they were not a true religious community.
So did you grow up? I'm curious if you grew up in Catholicism, then it seems like you knew a lot about how it works. Were your family involved in a church before kind of meeting these people?
Oh, yes, I was always raised Catholic. And the cool thing was that because my parents are Latino, we're from El Salvador, or they are. So sometimes we would spend time with the Spanish community. Sometimes we would spend time with the English community. Sometimes we would spend time with the community that only does the Latin Mass. So I was really involved with a lot of different communities, so I knew how it flowed. And I've seen also other religious communities, how I know that they have their way of life, they have their rules, but also there's a structure where there's like a harmony. Whereas when I came to this group, the only harmony was it's very secluded, because other religious communities, they have to have, because you're not a separate church. You're still part of, that's like the idea, is you're still part of the church, but you're not separate. You're not better than anybody else. And the way that this new group framed it was every other community out there, whether Catholic, Protestant, atheist, they're all evil, they're all bad, they're all scum. All priests, all bishops, all Protestant pastors, they're all fake, they're all evil. So it's like they were brainwashing us to believe that now that we're in this group, we've been called because they're mystic, so we're special, we're better than everyone else. But because I had a bit of that foundation where I really saw a lot of other communities in the LA area, it was hard for me to really fully grab onto it.
It's true enough, right? They had a baseline of things that you already knew and understood. What was different was, what I'm hearing is, this leader chose you. And he said, you in particular are really special.
That's what I thought. But then later on, because being there for 11 years, and I was able to I'm good at connecting with people, talking to people, and I've had a lot of conversations. And it was revealed to me actually after I left that the founder actually told some of the priests under his care, hey, go tell people that they have a vocation. So,
Yeah.
okay, I felt like I was being called, but then later I'm finding out that these next in line, they were told to say the same thing to who knows how many people. So they probably had that same feeling. But me, I took it. I said, yeah, I got to go. I got to join.
Right. It's called grooming. Yeah.
Exactly.
They want you to feel a certain way.
And I felt it.
Yeah. It works. It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, I'm curious about, it's obvious that you have done so much work around your story. And coming from my own kind of high control environments, I know the peace or the help that can come from like filling out the whole story of being like, this is what happened, but this is what I know now. This is what was actually happening, and going back to that. But I wonder, in your story, like connecting with that younger Ryan who doesn't know all this information, doesn't know that this is what they're saying to everybody, right? Here you are entering this environment and being told that you're special, and being told, I'm curious, what was the allure? What drew you in? Because they have hooks. There's ways to get you in. And I'm curious what that experience was for you, meeting these new people. Your parents are saying, hey, we don't know about this, but you're feeling really drawn in. Can you get us more to that younger part of you that didn't know all of this extra stuff yet?
The younger part of me was actually very religious, not just prayerful. I would go to downtown LA. I would help with a church called Santo Tomas in downtown LA. We would prepare the food. We would go to Skid Row. We would give it out. And I was only like 13, 14. And I had a lot of fun doing it. I would talk to those in the streets. And maybe it was not the best conversations, but I would listen to them. And I feel energized spiritually, just being there, seeing some of their faces. Religion is something that's always been special to me. Mm-hmm. And I've always, because I was raised by the Salesian, when I say raised, I went to a Salesian school. And they're like Italian sisters, but they were the best. These are nuns who were like, they were strict, but I've never felt so much love, even to now. Anyways, so I always had a desire to, maybe I can do something in my life that is serving the Lord, but I'm still young. I'm still in high school, so we'll see how it goes. And I was actually planning my life out. Maybe I will, after high school, my plan is to go to college, then to go to the University of Southern California, maybe take journalism, do some photography, maybe make some movies. But at the same time, I want to put a place in my mind where I'm open to serving the Lord. So while that's going on, then this community comes in, and it was the perfect timing. And it's, hey, God is calling you now. So I had to put all of my ambitions to the side, and that little corner of my head that was like, I want to save this for wherever God wants me. I guess I was just at a vulnerable state, and I was like, yeah. And I totally believe that this community was full on legit. But over time, I got to see that it wasn't.
You talking about these, were they nuns, the Salesian nuns?
Salesians are, there are Salesian sisters, and there's also the male counterpart. Okay. And there's also a group of laity that my mom was a part of in the early 90s, where they just do some services, help food prep, stuff like that.
Yeah, it sounds like these people also had a really profound impact on you in your life at such a young age, where you said, I've never felt love like that. Even until now, I've never felt love like that.
Yeah, it's true. I do have love from my siblings, my parents, yeah. But these are memories that you can look back on, and I can say that no one's childhood is perfect. We live in a corrupt world, Not everything is golden, but those memories, even though they were imperfect, there were a lot of golden highlights in it. And I can really look back and I felt safe.
Yeah. Just thinking, of course you wanted to, when someone impacts your life in a really positive way, it influences who you are and who you imagine you want to become, especially when you're a young kid, right? Like these sisters are having such an impact on your life. And of course you had this growing desire to want to serve God. At least from my point of view, it makes a lot of sense to me that, yeah, you're primed for the picking once this other group comes along and also is seeing something special in you, but you don't know there's some ulterior motives going on or some underlying things that it's different from this first experience that you had.
I totally thought that it was a calling. God is calling, a vocation. And I get it. People have callings in life, whatever. But the way I see it now is let the person and God decide what that path is going to be. Where this group was saying, no, God is telling me to tell you. That's wrong. That becomes spiritual manipulation and it becomes abusive. And then you have these people who become either priests or nuns at times, not just in my group, but all over in Catholicism, and maybe also in evangelical or fundamentalist circles. Maybe this happens too, where there's someone in authority, a parent, who thinks that they know what's right for their child, and they think that, oh, I read this Bible passage, this is what God wants you to do. No, let the person walk with God, and whatever this person ends up doing, that's their business. Let them live their life. And this religious community made it their business to tell me what to do with my life. And when I wanted to leave, they're like, no, you can't leave because now you're with us and you're stuck. So yeah, so I stayed for 11 years.
Okay.
It came from such a beautiful place inside of you that wants to serve. It felt a lot of pleasure, talking to other people, helping other people. At what point do you start to feel like, wait, no, this is wrong? Do you remember that first moment where you felt like this can't be love?
In the very beginning, there was, because we would have this thing called journal writing. And I still love to write in my journal. But like I said, we only had 3 to 4 hours sleep. So after we do our Bible readings, like at 1, 2 in the morning, I can't remember exactly, 3 in the morning, we do our prayers, we do some Bible reading, and then you have time, like 30 minutes to write in your journal, reflecting on these passages and also having a conversation with God. So I'm doing this, and the superior, because we had different superiors at times, the superior at that moment was a total jerk. And before I viewed him as a happy guy, but when I saw he was an authority, he became this tyrant. So like just wanting to control, micromanager kind of jerk. But I remember I was just 17-year-old kid and I'm trying my best. And then at the end, he grabs my journal and he sees that there's a lot of, we would call it antennas, because when we're sleepy, we do all these scribbles. So there's all these like antennas drawn all over my journal. And he starts reading it and he was saying in front of everybody, you know, how shameful is this, that you're writing this to God? This is supposed to be your love letter to God and you're giving him this garbage. Like, how would the founder feel? How do you think Jesus feels? How do you think are you pleasing Jesus by doing this garbage? And like immediately I just sunk back and I was thinking, what the heck am I doing here? I mean, I had that enough. I mean, I was still young, but I was like, I need to get out of here, but I don't know how. I want to get out of here. But then it was just, after that, he love bombed me, not in a bad way, but hey, cheering me up. And then after that, there was shame, and then they like lift you up so that you can like continue. And I wanted to leave at that very moment, but then a lot of the other brothers were talking to me the ones who joined at the same time as me, and they were like, hey, come on, man, stick it out. This is God's call. And remember, if you leave, God's not going to bless your family, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, dang. So I think at that moment, I learned to push aside things that I disagreed with and just run with it. Because then the theology of the more you suffer, the more points you gain in God's eyes. I was like, okay, I'm just going to suffer. But that was when already immediately, like it was like a month in, I already had that revelation that I need to get the heck out of here. But they were able to manipulate me to no longer trust myself and to trust them over myself.
Yeah, such an impossible choice for a young boy who wants to honor God.
Yeah. Like, how can I say no to God?
Yeah.
And they put that on you. Like, how dare
Yeah.
you saying no to God?
And to feel like they're holding your family hostage too. Like your family's well-being and your spiritual well-being rests on you doing what these people say. If they're going to humiliate you in front of everybody and then make you feel better, you just have to go along for their ride. Am I tracking that right?
Yeah, I felt that I'd had no choice.
Yeah.
And then maybe a few months after that, actually, one of the same guy who recruited me, the one who said, I see that you have a calling, whatever, he liked to test people. So one of the tests that he did on me was actually to make the story even, I'm trying to make the story as short as I can because it's 11 years. But my brother was also in the community, but he was in there before me. And from our conversations, we had totally different the way it was with him compared to mine. But he decided he didn't want to be there. So when I joined, it was just starting to be his 7th year in the community. And I knew he had wanted to leave over the years, but I didn't know why he didn't leave. So I joined. I thought we were going to be in there for life. As soon as I joined, my brother is, I'm out of here. He used that my brother was leaving. So now the idea that he's putting in my mind is, okay, your brother is leaving. Who's going to save your family? You know what? We don't want you here. We don't want you. I'm going to buy you a ticket. I'm sending you home. And he did that. It's like a reverse psychology. Because then I was like, no, I want to stay. I want to see my family. He's, oh, your brother's leaving. You want to be like him? Like putting him down as if he's a loser. And that the only way for salvation to happen to our family was if I stay in this community. And I remember he, in front of the sisters, in front of the other brothers, in front of the other priests, he would shame me. Look at this guy. Like, I don't want him in my presence. So he did that for 2 weeks. And then he did this big thing where it's like the whole community is gathered, all the brothers and sisters. He was like, I've tested this brother and I pretended like I wanted him to leave. But the truth is, I want him to stay. And it was like I was crying and everything. But later I realized, because that happened while my brother was transitioning to leave, that event where he gathered everybody and had me crying was 2 days before my brother had his flight back to LA to be back home. So now that I'm older, I'm seeing that, yes, he was trying to win one over me, but he was also trying to get my brother to stay. He was trying to get my brother to feel guilty and to feel like, oh, this is the only way to salvation. But my brother was a bit older and he wasn't manipulated at all. Oh, I don't know how it's very different, but he was very much of an adult and he didn't get pushed around. Whereas me, I really got pushed around because I trusted these people. So yeah, I decided to share that part.
That's a good part. Not like a good part, but it's an important part. It's emphasizing just how deeply you cared for your family and the responsibility that you were taking on as a young boy to make sure everybody was okay.
Yeah, family is very important.
And in this process, it's like the continual switching between the ceiling and the floor in the way that these folks are engaging with you. Of they're saying something, and then the next day, oh no, we didn't actually mean that. We meant the other thing. And just the flip-flop, topsy-turvy confusion of your own experience.
It did work for the longest time. At that age, I'm still maturing. I'm still getting to know myself. Also, sleep deprivation doesn't help. It doesn't help in forming the mind. But I think like when I turned around 24 or 25, I started finding the maturity to confront some of their lies and BS and be like, no, this isn't right. And because of that, I would be put in solitary confinement and isolation. And it's not really, sometimes it would just be the solitary confinement was like, I'm in the chapel, but I'm not allowed to talk to anybody else. Like everybody else is around me. They're doing their thing, but I can't eat with them. I can't pray with them. I can't have recreation with them. I'm totally separate. So they're like, oh, you're not in solitary confinement. You're here with us. And then like once or twice a week, they would allow me to do like small, we would call it apostolate, where like you go to a family house and I'd maybe pray with them. And then I'd come back and I'd be stuck in the chapel and be like, no, see, like, we're giving you space. So I really like that, how you brought the ceiling and the floor kind of thing, because it was like, I feel like waterboarding. I'm so close to dying because I'd be in the chapel and I had to be in the chapel from 1:30 a.m. to sometimes 10 p.m. If I wanted to go to the restroom, I need to ring a bell. Or if I wanted my food, I need to ring a bell because I can't leave the room. So it was, but
Humiliating.
it's humiliating, and it was enraging because I knew it was, at this age, I knew this is when I started like questioning, this isn't right. But at the same time, I'm falling back still on, but I'm suffering. Offer this to God and you're going to win. You're going to save more souls by this kind of suffering. But now from 25, now I'm 37, I recognize it's not, suffering, it exists, but this isn't, we're not talking about suffering. We're talking about abuse.
Yeah.
It's crossing a line. There's small sufferings. I don't know. You stub your toe in the morning. Instead of saying something wrong, you know what? Maybe God help me get through this. I don't know. That's how I see suffering. You can either use it to fuel you to be an angry, bitter person, or you can use it to fuel you to do something good in your life. And that's what I'm trying to do by starting the podcast.
Yes. Earlier you said, I don't like using the word brainwashed. I feel like they were manipulating your brain, right? And training it. And part of that, what I'm hearing is with this like social isolation, the solitary confinement, they are using one of the most powerful motivators of the brain against you. That good part of you that wants social connection, that needs social connection, not just you, but like everybody, all human beings do. But particularly for you, for somebody so focused on caring for other people, they're using that same quality to punish you and condition you to both keep you connected by isolating you. We're gonna get you where it hurts the most.
It's true, because I did love social connection. I love that. That's where I think I thrive most in life. And after that experience, then, because I call it an end times cult. Then I got in trouble for standing up for myself to one of the ugly nuns. I say ugly, I don't mean physically, just her character is an ugly character. I stood up to her, and I've never done that, and I got in trouble. So then I got 3 months of solitary in the basement, and we called it the end times dungeon because we were like preppers. The world is going to end any day, the apocalypse, blah, blah, blah. So I was in there for 3 months, but I was getting so mad. Then, I'm trying to make a story super quick because I know we're limited for time. But then the Catholic diocese, because we were in Delaware, started hearing true reports about us. Because inside the cult, you're not, even though they called themselves Catholic, they were never transparent. That's why I can't call them Catholic. So then people were really giving out true information, and the bishop was like, enough, you can't be here. You're not allowed to be here. The priests who are in this community can't have mass, can't hear confessions, have nothing to do in this area. You need to get out. I obeyed. I got sent to the Philippines, but some of them stayed. There, I was allowed to. Now I was like, it was free. I had a good superior. I was able to communicate with people, go out. It was like it was just a new fresh air. And it's like, okay, this is what I wanted to do for the longest time. Then they moved that superior, give me a new superior. And I'm saying it's a total opposite, because now, like, every time I'm talking to somebody, it's like, oh, Brian, why are you talking to those people? Are you trying to make a relationship? Are you trying to? So then, and this would be done publicly. Or if I'm talking to a guy, a younger gentleman, just having a conversation, then in the sermons, it was, oh, this guy here must be a homosexual. What the heck is this coming from? And then from there, it came to beatings. And I would see the other members, they were young, they were in their 20s, and some of them were crying because they didn't want to beat me. The superior was upset because he saw me eating pizza with some of the, we call it benefactors, people who come and they help us. And they offered me pizza, so I took a bite, and then the superior sees me, and then the next thing I know, Later that night, with the other in front of the community, he announces that because of my ways of being so out there, and you're trying to be so pompous, we need to beat you. And yeah, so I see the other brothers crying, and I was upset. I was like, why? And I guess the answer was because you're not good. You're not a good person. And at this point of being there, at that point, it was like 10 years. I knelt down, laid down, and took the beatings. And I'm thinking, this isn't God's love. But they're telling me it's God's love. So I was just madly confused.
How could you not be? The bind of, okay, this is the rule. You have to take what people offer you. Who can make sense of something like that?
And confusion had become your normal for 11 years. So to even be confused about that, yeah, because that's just, everything is confusing. This is the world, this is the water you're swimming in.
Yeah, it was a dark time in my life, but I think that's the first time I started giving into the feeling of anger. If anything, I've been angry at myself. Like the one who I said, when I went to the Philippines initially, he allowed me to have a new fresh air and to really, I had my prayer life. I can do my apostolate, pray with families, serve. And I was like, wow, this is what I've been waiting for so long. And then he gets switched to another place, to I think Manila. And I stayed in Cebu. And this new superior, I had known him for a long time. He seemed cool. Like in the earlier story, I thought they're good. But sometimes there are some people, when they get the baton or when they get like the ribbon, this authority, they just turn into jerks. And I wanted to smack him. I felt, even maybe now I still feel it, but man, this guy, he needs a good smacking, because here he is having other people, we would have to stop each other. We would have to flagellate each other, get whips and beat each other. And if not, then it's okay. If you don't do it, like you're going to get no food, or I'm going to have to do more solitary confinement. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But now that I'm grown, it's not acceptable. And that is not Catholic. It's not Christian. It's not good. Bottom line, it's not good.
I love your righteous rage. It's well placed. What I'm hearing is people are really important to you. Your family is really important to you. Connection's really important to you. And so to leave a community like this, where do you go? Where are you finding your belonging now?
Honestly, I don't know where I belong in the long run, but I'm enjoying the ride, because when you leave a cult, you've lost so much. At least I did. I remember like hearing, oh, like people are going to prom, and I'd feel like, damn, I missed out on those things. I missed out on relationships. And yes, when I left the cult, I dove into so many relationships, and I dove into a life that's maybe not the wisest, but then I decided, I have to take a step back and allow myself not only to heal emotionally, but I also have to discover, what is my identity? Where is it, like you've asked, where is it that I belong? And I think I belong just where I am, like wherever I am, but I need to do my best. And I think I did that even in the community. I tried my best, but I didn't have the wisdom to see red flags. I didn't have the fortitude to really step up and say, no, this is wrong. And yes, I did that a little bit, but then I would be afraid by these monsters and I'd surrender. Now I see that because of that experience, I haven't lost my faith. I'm not blaming God. I blame these jerks because they know what Christianity is, but they're not using it. I know what Christianity is. I have a choice. Either leave Christianity, blame them, or I can use my knowledge of what Christianity is and just do it. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to do it. If others don't do it, that's their business. But I know my business. Personally, I think where I belong is doing my best every day, continuing to grow in my hobbies, and to continue doing my podcasts and see if people want to share their truth. And when people do share their truth, it's radiating to me, being here, listening. And now, right now that I'm sharing it, it's scary, but I'm having fun.
I was curious if that's where this was going to go. I'm wondering if you're finding connection and belonging with the people on your podcast that also want to be truth tellers. Because as you're talking and you're telling the truth, there's a lot of resonance going on for me.
Sometimes I feel connection, sometimes I don't. But I think that's where Christians in general, we can do better. Because sometimes I think the feeling is, if we don't connect, then ostracize, or this person has a different point of view, I don't want to see them, or we don't want to hang out with them, we don't want to be with them. And sometimes I don't connect with people who are on the show, but I think that as Christians, we can do a better job at just shutting up, just listening. Let the person talk. You don't have to give a whole Bible verse all the time or give your words of wisdom. Sometimes the best preaching is just listening, just being there. And I say that because when I started sharing my experiences, I was terrified, because you would be amazed at how many people, Catholics, were like, how dare you? How can you say these evil lies? I'm like, they're not lies, they're truth. And then, okay, if it's a truth, then maybe you deserve the punishment. And that's terrifying. All I wanted was someone to acknowledge that these things happened. And so that's what I want my podcast to be. Like, maybe I don't agree with every single thing that every guest says. That's your truth. But I have to have the humility to just listen. And I think that's more of a sermon than an actual hour sermon. Just listen.
It's like you have a beautiful ministry.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes, but it does get dark. But the idea of this I don't know if it's a ministry, but this is just my philosophy, is sometimes some of the people who I invite on the show are people who were never listened to. Look at alcoholics. Their kids, sometimes they also suffer so much, not because they're alcoholics, but because they weren't listened to. And every time they try to talk, it's okay, they get silenced, or no one's listening to me. Like my parent, my dad, where is my guardian, is in another world with the bottle. And how does that feel growing up when you're not being listened to? So on the podcast, I don't know what trauma these people have been through, but I want it to be a place where, okay, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let you talk. And I'll ask questions like, how y'all doing? Ask questions that will get the conversation flowing. But at the same time, this is your episode. This is your chance to share your truth. And it is connecting, but it is also opens my mind to other truths out there.
I'm hearing you have developed a lot of discernment within yourself of, yeah, this sounds right to me, or no, it doesn't. You can keep your cool. You can still have an open, spacious place for people to talk, but within yourself, yes or no for you. Yeah.
With self-respect. Of course, there are people who get offended by everything and anything, and I get it. That's what you want to do. Be you. But at the same time, I have to know where I stand. And I'm not going to be sharing it all the time, especially when someone else is on my podcast. I'm going to let them talk. But I know my truth. If someone's going to ask me what I think, I have to be honest. And maybe sometimes the best thing to do is just keep quiet. But I know where I stand. And I think that it's humbling, because back in the day inside the cult, I stood wherever they told me to stand. I believed whatever they told me to believe, because I'd be punished. Now, what are you going to do? I know who I am, and I just want to be a good person. That's it.
Ryan, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your person.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
And that's where we end today. We are so glad you joined us. We want to invite you to get involved in the show. First, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. That way, you don't miss out on a future episode. If you're super curious, you can also find us on YouTube. Second, if you'd like to learn more about joining us and sharing your story, send us an email at phoenixeffectpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. This podcast and website represents the opinions of Elizabeth Key, Kristen Boskel-John, and Dennis Roberts, and their guests to the show and website. The content here should not be taken as medical or psychological advice. This content is for informational purposes only, and because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. The views and opinions expressed in the podcast and website are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, We welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a therapist-client relationship.